The Golgotha is here. Look at that. Look at that. Can you see the Golgotha? This is the bedrock. You actually touched it from it. The Bible mentioned that so many people resurrected. According to the legend, one of them was the first man ever.
Deep beneath Jerusalem's holiest ground, science is uncovering what religion has always guarded. Hidden under the Holy Sepulchre, researchers have found evidence of a garden, a quarry, and a tomb that mirror the Gospels too perfectly to dismiss. Is archaeology about to prove the crucifixion or expose a story 2,000 years in the making?
They say that Golgotha, the place where the crucifixion happened, it's called Golgotha, the place of the skull, because that's where Adam's head is buried, and that it's also perhaps the same place.
Was this truly the garden where Joseph of Arimathea once offered his tomb? Or was it merely a place that flourished beside a long-lost burial ground? Archaeology rarely gives clear proof. It only gives small clues to guide us. Yet here, those clues seem to fit a story that billions have believed for generations. Tracing tradition and new archaeology at Golgotha. Before we can grasp the shocking discoveries modern archaeologists have made, we have to go back, way back to the place where it all began. Ancient Jerusalem, 2,000 years ago, was filled with thick air from incense. The streets were crowded with traders and travelers, and just beyond the city walls was a rocky hill. It was barren, harsh, and shaped like a skull, so locals called it Golgotha, also known as the place of the skull. To the Romans, it was nothing more than an execution site, but for the Jews, it became the stage for the most defining moment in human history, the crucifixion of Jesus. Now fast forward to the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine, the first Roman ruler to embrace Christianity, sent his mother, Helena, on a sacred quest. Her mission was to trace the physical footprints of Christ's life and death. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, locals directed her to a site long revered by early Christians, a rocky hill outside the city's 1st century walls, believed to be where Jesus was crucified and buried. Helena ordered the demolition of a pagan temple that stood on the spot, and beneath it, workers uncovered a tomb made from solid rock. Convinced this was where Christ had been laid to rest, she commanded that a magnificent church be built over it. The church still stands today, known to millions as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. When you step inside, the atmosphere shifts. The light grows softer, candles flicker, and every sound hangs in the air, as if time itself has paused. You pass beneath archways shaped by centuries, and each one is holding a fragment of history. At the heart of this sacred labyrinth, a staircase rises toward Calvary, the place where tradition says the cross once stood. Even now, behind protective glass, a piece of the ancient rock remains beneath the altar of the Greek Orthodox chapel. There, pilgrims kneel before it, reaching out to touch the stone that has inspired awe and devotion for nearly 2,000 years. Father Amadeo Rico of the Franciscan Biblical Institute once described it as a 5-meter rocky outcrop, central to Christian memory as the Hill of the Crucifixion. He explained that even when Emperor Hadrian, who, in the early 2nd century CE, refounded Jerusalem as a Roman colony, tried to erase Christian history by building over it, this rock was never destroyed. Somehow, it managed to survive. Maybe it was chance, or maybe it was fate. Regardless, it endured, and that in itself is symbolic. Today, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands as a living mosaic of faith. 2 chapels stand beside the sacred rock, one Roman Catholic, the other Greek Orthodox, each marking the place where, according to tradition, Jesus was nailed to the cross. The sound of Latin hymns often mixes with the soft chanting of Byzantine prayers, creating a melody that has no borders or language, only devotion. However, it is easy to forget that this holy site, though now enclosed by city walls, once stood beyond them. In the 1st century, executions took place outside Jerusalem's gates, a stark symbol of Roman power. This detail aligns with both Gospel accounts and Roman records, adding facts to the site's authenticity. Here's where history takes an intriguing turn. Over the following centuries after Jesus' crucifixion, Jerusalem's boundaries changed and were rebuilt several times. By the Byzantine period, the area identified as Golgotha, and the nearby tomb was incorporated within later city boundaries. It was a small but significant change, and even the New Testament hinted at it. Acts chapter 6, verse 9 mentions the synagogue of the freedmen, whose members may have lived near this newly expanded area of the city. What was once outside Jerusalem's walls became part of the city itself, a quiet transformation that lends further support to the traditional location of both Golgotha and the tomb. Archaeologist Dan Bahat, one of the higher authorities on Jerusalem's ancient topography, has spent years examining the site, and his conclusion is striking. We have no other site that can lay a claim nearly as weighty, and we really have no reason to reject the authenticity of the site. His words carry the weight of evidence supported by historical, textual, and archaeological findings. Though many other locations have been proposed over the centuries, none possess the same depth of historical continuity as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. What makes this even more remarkable is how one small patch of land has managed to endure centuries of conquest, destruction, and renewal. The Persians razed it, the Crusaders rebuilt it, earthquakes split it open, and wars threatened to erase it, yet it always rose again. Each time its story was buried, it found a way to return, stronger than before. Walking through its corridors today, you can almost feel the weight of centuries pressing in. Every stone seems to say something ancient and unresolved, something that draws in both believers and skeptics alike. There's a reason millions visit this place each year, and it's not only Christians. Historians, scientists, and even atheists come too, all drawn by the same haunting question: could this truly be the ground where the crucifixion and resurrection took place? For centuries, people have debated, doubted, and believed. Yet the evidence from geological to textual and traditional continually points back to this same hill, this same rock, this same tomb. And that's where the story becomes even more compelling. In recent decades, archaeologists have gone beneath the church itself, excavating through layers of Roman architecture, Byzantine reconstruction, and medieval expansion. What they've uncovered beneath the surface may now be the strongest proof yet that the ancient tradition holds true. And as new discoveries continue to emerge, one truth remains certain: the story of Golgotha isn't finished, it's still unfolding. Recent excavations beneath the Holy Sepulchre may finally reveal what history and belief have long kept hidden. New excavations beneath the Holy Sepulchre. In 2022, something remarkable took place beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This was something few believed was possible in such a sacred and crowded space. The floor, worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims' footsteps, began to crack, and what began as a simple restoration soon turned into one of the most revealing archaeological projects in the modern history of the Holy Land. Because the church is shared by several Christian traditions, including the Franciscans, Greek Orthodox, and Armenians, the restoration required careful coordination. To ensure worship remained undisturbed, teams worked in precisely scheduled shifts, moving from one small section to another. While services continued above, archaeologists, engineers, and priests below operated with quiet precision, digging beneath altars one week and through narrow corridors the next. It was a delicate dance between devotion and discovery. Heading the excavation was Professor Francesca Stasola of Sapienza University of Rome, a seasoned archaeologist renowned for her research on early Christian sites. Her team approached the church floor like an ancient manuscript, each layer waiting to be read. As tiles were lifted and mortar brushed away, the story of centuries began to unfold beneath their feet. At first, the discoveries were modest. Simple things like dust, stones, and fragments of marble, but it wasn't long before something extraordinary emerged. Roughly 6 meters below the surface, the team uncovered traces of an ancient quarry carved into the limestone bedrock. It was deep, chiseled cuts unmistakably Roman, and this revelation transformed everything. This ground, long regarded solely as a sacred site, had once been a working quarry in the Iron Age. Scholars had long theorized that Golgotha might have been part of such a quarry in the Judean highlands, and now the evidence lay within the stone itself. Some even believed this same quarry could date as far back as the time of King David. As archaeologists dug deeper, they began to notice more things which were unexpected. Starting with openings cut into the rock, narrow and rectangular, typical of burial chambers from the Second Temple period. Gradually, the outlines of tombs emerged, and the team quickly realized they were standing within what had once been a Jewish cemetery dating to the time of Jesus. Some tombs were simple, while others were carefully hewn, suggesting wealth and status, but one in particular stood out. It was a finely carved chamber, long sealed and unused. While its exact identity remains uncertain, its design closely matches the Gospel description of the tomb donated by Joseph of Arimathea, the man who offered his own resting place for Jesus. Whether or not this was the tomb, its presence strongly supports the idea that the area was indeed a burial ground in Jesus' time. Professor Stasola later summarized the site's evolution in 3 simple phrases. First a quarry, then a garden, then tombs. So it is believed now that this was a place where stonecutters labored to build Jerusalem. When the quarry fell silent, it became a quiet garden, and in time, it turned into a necropolis, a city of the dead where tombs were carved into the rock. The shift from industry to stillness, from life to death, mirrors the very story that would one day make this ground sacred. As the work went on, the archaeologists uncovered something smaller, but equally remarkable. On one exposed stone slab inside the church, there were faint scratches. When light struck at just the right angle, the markings revealed themselves as ancient inscriptions, including tiny crosses, names, and prayers etched in Greek, Latin, and Armenian. These inscriptions were left by early pilgrims during the Byzantine and Crusader eras, some dating back more than 1,000 years. They stand as a silent testament to generations of believers who once stood on the same ground, touched the same stones, and felt the same awe. To see those carvings is to witness faith made tangible, etched in history itself. The findings confirmed what scholars had long suspected. It was clear now that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands atop multiple layers of history, each revealing a different chapter of the same story. The church we see today, first built under Emperor Constantine in the 4th century and later rebuilt by the Crusaders, rests directly upon these ancient worlds. Every step on its marble floor connects to a past far older than the structure itself. This wasn't the first time the site had unveiled secrets hidden beneath its surface. In 2016, before the larger excavation began, restorers briefly lifted the marble slab covering what many believe to be Jesus' burial chamber. Beneath it, they uncovered the original limestone bed, the same stone surface early Christians revered to as the place where Christ's body once lay. This discovery, at the time, stunned researchers, but in 2022, the deeper excavations revealed an even broader story. Standing inside the church today, it's easy to forget that beneath its polished floors lies a silent world of ancient rock and forgotten graves. Yet each new discovery draws us closer to understanding how this single patch of land evolved from quarry to garden, from cemetery to sacred shrine. For Professor Stasola and her team, the dig was more than a scientific endeavor. It was the unfolding of faith and civilization woven together across millennia. Even now, their work continues, with new sections opening every few months. Each trench hides a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Every discovery adds a new thread to the unfolding story of the world's most sacred site. And yet, one can't help but wonder what still lies beneath those untouched corners of the church. Could more tombs, inscriptions, or artifacts be hidden below, waiting to bring us closer to the first-century world that once surrounded Golgotha? The question lingers in the air like incense, a reminder that this story is not over. It's still being written, one discovery at a time. Ancient seeds, pollen, and olive pits. Could this quiet discovery reveal the long-lost garden once described in the Gospels? Botanical traces of an ancient garden beneath the Holy Sepulchre. They were scientists equipped with brushes, sieves, and microscopes determined to uncover whatever history the soil still guarded. As they sifted through layers of ancient construction, they began finding traces so small they could have been overlooked, bits of soil, seed fragments, and tiny grains of pollen. To the untrained eye, they were insignificant, but to the archaeobotanists working nearby, these microscopic clues revealed a story reaching back 2,000 years. Beneath the basilica's modern foundations, in layers that predate Emperor Hadrian's rebuilding of Jerusalem, archaeologists uncovered olive pits, grape seeds, and grains of ancient pollen. It was quiet, but undeniable evidence of cultivation. For centuries, the Gospel of John has described the place of Jesus' burial as being set in a garden. Though that detail was long considered symbolic or theological, these discoveries didn't prove the Gospel story word for word, yet they offered something extraordinary, a tangible connection between Scripture and soil, between faith and the physical world. The samples were sent to laboratories for detailed study. Through radiocarbon dating and microscopic analysis, scientists began piecing together their age and origin. The results were measured but clear. The remains belonged to a time before Hadrian's transformation of Jerusalem into Aelia Capitolina, roughly around the 1st century. That revelation quietly astonished scholars. It suggested that long before the great church was built, this ground was already alive with growth. They believed there were olive trees bearing fruit, vines stretching over limestone, and the hum of a garden that time had hidden beneath stone. For Professor Stasola and her team, the discovery was less about confirming faith and more about context. It gave texture to the Gospel's description, grounding it in real earth, not metaphor. It doesn't prove the story, Professor Stasola said, but it makes it easier to imagine. And perhaps that's what makes the find so powerful. The Garden of John's Gospel was never meant to be grand. It was simple, human, alive. The evidence beneath the church suggests that once, so was this place. As studies continue and results await peer review, the story of the ancient garden is still unfolding. Yet even now, one thing feels clear. Beneath the stones and candles of the Holy Sepulchre lies not just a relic of faith, but a trace of life. A reminder that before it became the center of the Christian world, it was simply a garden, and maybe that's what makes this discovery so moving. The thought that the resurrection story, one that changed history forever, began in a place that first bloomed with quiet life. While the traces of the garden whisper softly of life and renewal, another discovery, unearthed miles away, tells a far harsher story. In 1968, during construction at Givat HaMivtar in northern Jerusalem, workers accidentally exposed a rock-cut tomb that would soon become one of the most haunting finds in biblical archaeology. Inside the tomb was a limestone ossuary, a small box used to store human bones after the flesh had decayed. Etched neatly across its surface was the inscription, "Yehohanan, son of Hagkol." What lay inside that box would change how historians understood one of history's most infamous methods of execution. Among the bones was a right heel, and through it ran a long iron nail still intact after nearly 2,000 years. The metal had corroded over time, its surface crusted with fragments of ancient wood, possibly from the crossbeam or footrest to which the victim had been fastened. It was a chilling sight, the physical imprint of suffering preserved in stone and rust. No longer was crucifixion a distant concept from ancient texts or religious art. It was right there, embedded in bone. For centuries, descriptions of crucifixion had come almost entirely from historical writings and artistic depictions. Accounts by Roman historians, Jewish scholars, and early Christians who had seen or heard of it until this discovery, archaeology had never produced concrete, physical proof of the act itself. The heel bone of Yehohanan changed that. It anchored the gospel descriptions and Roman records in hard evidence, providing a direct bodily link to one of the most brutal punishments of the ancient world. The find also offered rare insight into the technical realities of crucifixion. Specialists studying the remains concluded that the nail had likely entered the heel laterally, suggesting the victim's feet were nailed to the sides of a wooden post or footrest, rather than directly to the front of a cross. The wood fragments attached to the nail were identified as olive and other local species, materials commonly used in construction and fuel in first-century Judea. Even these small details helped reconstruct a more precise picture of how crucifixion was carried out deliberately and with terrifying efficiency. For archaeologists and theologians alike, the discovery was more than a grim curiosity. It stood as a bridge between faith and history, showing that the crucifixion, described so vividly in ancient texts, was not a myth or metaphor, but a practiced method of execution that left real, tangible traces in the earth. Yehohanan's remains did not tell us whose cross he hung upon, nor could they confirm any specific biblical episode. Yet they proved one simple, sobering truth. The world described in the Gospels was a physical one, shaped by real people, real suffering, and real events. So, what do you think all this really means? The garden, the tombs, the heel bone, all uncovered after centuries of silence. Could it be that modern science is slowly confirming what ancient faiths have believed all along? Or are we simply piecing together coincidences from the past, giving them meaning because we want to believe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.